Hello and welcome to the Open Book channel. My name is Lady Valheim, your designated open book. An extra special thank you for joining me for this video in which I will be talking about a very serious topic. This is my fourth attempt at writing a script, explaining and expanding on this case study in a tactful and concise way because I am that case study, and this whole experience has been fairly upsetting. So I hope I do a good job, not just filling you in on my specific situation, but providing value and knowledge of what happened, why it happened, and why this whole situation sets a dangerous precedent for small creators. So without further ado, in this video series, I'm going to talk about how I've been pushed into a career that I am not ready for by my government, why I was denied financial benefits because I am a small self-published writer, and unfortunately, I'll also be going over how, because of the way our support system operates, I have been kind of set up to fail. Before we get started, I would like to make a disclaimer that this is not a complaint against my government as a whole, or rather, this video is not inherently anti-government or anything. I am just a very specific case, and because of a variety of unique factors, I've been put in an exceptionally disadvantaged position. So I'm from Canada, eh? Ontario specifically, but the program we're going to be talking about is uniform across the nation. I'm not sure how this will translate to other countries, if it's in any way applicable, but for all you small Canadian writers out there, listen up. This is what happened to me. Don't let it happen to you. And I mean, like, also disclaimer, don't do fraud either, but just knowing what happened to me as a possibility might help you understand what you shouldn't be prioritizing as a writer, and more importantly, when. How you speak about your writing and who you speak to could land you incomeless as an unintentionally diagnosed small business owner. So, to start, I need to contextualize what I did for my day job. I was a general laborer, more specifically in the field of what you would call cottage maintenance, because I live in good old cottage country. Sanding, staining, chinking, all things that can't be done in wet or cold weather. It's seasonal work. It's an industry that's always expected to slow down or cut off during the winter months, and as expected, I was laid off in mid-October. It's typical in this field of employment to go on employment insurance when that happens. For anyone outside of Canada, EI is more like a respectable welfare. EI's financial support is based on a portion of what you specifically would have gotten on your average paycheck before being laid off, and is only applicable to people who have worked a certain amount of hours, who lost their job through no fault of their own, and who are willing to work currently but just don't happen to have a job. Employment insurance is normally a great support system for workers in turbulent fields, so they don't have to shoulder the consequences of inherently unstable jobs. But let's be honest, and this is why this is one of the videos that I've chosen to keep for patrons specific, because people have vastly different opinions about this kind of thing. But that last condition that I mentioned of being willing to work as a qualifier to get employment insurance is rarely held to its own standards. Many people, in my personal experience, don't give a rat's ass about looking for other forms of employment while they're on EI, especially if they had a seasonal job. They just take the employment insurance money to supplement them through the off-season, only ever having the intention to go back to their previous job once it's summer again. I, however, am not like most people, in that I am naive. Employment insurance's willingness to seek other work while on its benefits includes seeking any work that you can get on the conditions that you claim the amount you make, so it can be deducted from what they give you. And I, who was laid off for my seasonal labor job, fully and genuinely wanted to do my best to meet that expectation when I went on EI for the winter. I didn't want to just take the money and run. Why? Well, like I said, I'm naive and stupid, but also because, unlike 99% of the rest of the population, I am a special case when it comes to what jobs I am able to do. I do not have a car, nor do I drive, on top of the fact that I live 15 minutes out of town in the boonies, and driving into town in the winter is regularly dangerous and sometimes just plain impossible with the amount of snow that we get. Employment insurance takes into consideration your willingness to work over factors like limitations due to transportation. They don't even ask that, actually. They wouldn't deny me benefits based on my driverlessness. But because of those circumstances, I didn't want to be a piece of shit and take their money on the conditions that I look for work, knowing full well that I can't get another job during the winter. Side note, in case you are wondering, my other job had a provided carpool, which is how I managed. So, all that considered, I preemptively decided to take responsibility for my limitations. In expectation of being laid off, I was going to full send myself into self-publishing my last memoir, and reaching out to other small creators to build up my experience and credentials in other aspects of the field, like beta reading, and offer to make some ebook covers for my writing friends so that I can get even remotely competent at Photoshop. I started watching a lot of small business channels and author tubes publishing under their LLCs, and I was getting excited to spend the winter plugging away at my writing. And quite frankly, I got too excited because on the 1st of October, I registered a business name. Now, there is no gray area when it comes to the government. There's just black and white, right and wrong answers. And coining a business name was the wrong answer, because that registered to them a very specific set of intentions. My intentions registering the name of a publishing company was firstly, that I thought it was cute and I wanted to hold on to the name. And secondly, that's just what you do as a creator. That's what every big creator ever tells you to do. Start early, start your brand, work on your brand. Brand, brand, brand. I thought having a business name would be harmless and just a good way to work up my name as a writer, but instead, it legitimized me to my government as a small business owner, which sounds pretty duh. Like, duh, Slady, of course registering a business name makes you a small business owner. But that's not necessarily true, at least not as a sole proprietorship. I registered a sole proprietorship and not an LLC, which is the commonly more expanded and accepted one in the writing sphere. SPs actually have pretty much no expectations. You can register a name just to register it and do absolutely nothing with it. Let the license expire, and there are no penalties or extra charges for doing so. I didn't register my company with any intention of going into it as a full-time, self-employed business owner. I just wanted to placehold it, do a bit of work under it to get a bit of a name for it, yes, but the creative world is different than other businesses. Having a name and a following is a prerequisite. You need those before you're even at the starting line. In my eyes, I was setting myself up, not starting. But in the end, I had a business name registered to me. Regardless of what my expectations with it were, my intentions were seen as something else. And what sealed my fate in that regard, how they were going to acknowledge me as a small business rather than a floundering creator, was these three circumstantial questions. The first question was, how many hours did I intend to spend working on activities related to my company? Of course, my answer was not specific, and ultimately variable. I wasn't spending any hours on my business currently because it wasn't a business. But since I was otherwise going to be out of work for the winter and didn't currently have an alternative to do, I didn't lie about it. Yeah, I was probably going to spend a full time's worth of work hours doing my quote unquote business, which essentially boils down to doing anything with my hobby, writing. But that is also part of the catch. I was only doing those bare minimum things that my government would consider small business work, like setting up an author website, for example, because I didn't have a real job anymore. What else was I supposed to do with my days? The funny thing is, once you're on EI benefits, they expect you to seek out more work. But I go out of my way to start building so I might have a future opportunity to get work, and suddenly that's not okay. That's unapplicable. That's too much commitment to wanting to be a worker. And I get it. This specific point is more about the self-employment versus employment insurance spectrum, which we'll get to in a bit. But it feels backwards to someone in my current position. I only registered a business name and mentioned the possibility of freelancing because I wanted to do what they wanted me to do while jobless on EI, which is seek out whatever work that I can. But I did it preemptively, so that screwed me over. The second question was, do you plan on returning to your previous job if you can get your business to do well? And that was a pretty dirty hypothetical, if we're being honest. Of course, I'm going to say no. Why would I go back to my manual labor job in the summer if, big if, I miraculously managed to make a profit over the winter? Of course I wouldn't go back to my labor job if I could somehow find a way to make my passion hobby profitable. But what are the chances of that? It's like I started a YouTube channel, and the second that I got AdSense, the government suddenly started banking on me definitely getting 1 million subs and supporting myself off AdSense. Like, no YouTuber would say they'd pick a real job over just doing YouTube, but does simply having a YouTube channel that you spend time on qualify it as a job? Most reasonable people would say no. Not until you're actually supporting yourself with YouTube and can make that transition. But in my situation, the government is preemptively pulling that trigger for me. The third question they asked me, and I certainly answered wrong, was would my business be my primary income source over the winter? Which is another hypothetical, in the fact that my quote unquote business isn't an income source, wouldn't be an income source, and was never intended to be a genuine income source. In lieu of being laid off, EI was supposed to be my primary income source, and I was going to pick up freelance work if I could get it, to make an extra $20 or whatever a month to validate my worth in even receiving EI benefits in the first place. But that's not the right answer, or rather, it's too gray of an answer. Those three questions, which heavily leaned into hypotheticals to get the answers that they wanted out of me, in my government's opinion, set my intentions. That I was pursuing a small business in earnest and therefore wasn't applicable for EI benefits anymore. And I feel manipulated for two reasons. Firstly, they completely ignored the conditions of my situation, that the only reason I will be putting so much time into my business is because I don't have another job, not because I'm choosing it over actively getting another one, I just can't get another one right now. They used their questions to set my intentions with the business as you are fully committed and self-employed right now, because you hit our inapplicable cutoff limits when I'm sitting here trying to say, I'm just doing this because I'm self-employed. Please, please. And their conclusion lacks context, like spending more than 15 hours a week on writing related things, therefore in relation to the field of my business, actually means anything. The context of what creative work entails is entirely absent. This field isn't like other jobs. As hobby writers, we spend tens of hours a week on writing and editing, not to mention corresponding with the writing community, which they would likely chalk up to marketing, but you can't see that. There is no tangible reward for all the effort we put in. Even when we do accomplish something, like selling a short story once every couple months for an honorarium of $10 doesn't pay the fucking bills. All that matters to them is that you spent over 15 hours of your week in pursuit of that $10, regardless of whether you ever actually even earn it. Their hypotheticals are just skewed. They're addressing an improbable reality that literally any writer would know, but their questions and where they've chosen to make their cutoffs just aren't applicable to the field as a whole. You could literally hand me a fully operational indie publishing house with their own dedicated distribution center, sales team, agents, and roster of respectable signed authors, and it'd still be a flip of a coin whether they suddenly collapsed within the year. Just look at Shamrock Publishing. The writing world is volatile. There is no job security in it, even if I was already well established, which I'm not, even a little bit. Secondly, I feel manipulated because, well, a part of me feels like my dream has been twisted and taken away from me. It's been thrown on me prematurely. When I was taking my evaluation for benefits, the representative overseeing my case was talking about my writing so excitedly with me, they prompted me to go on, talk about what I wanted to do with my writing someday, and what I'm doing now, all the things that the future could hold. But everything that I told them, everything that I was proud of but would never likely see a dime from, was being recorded to use as leverage against me, to pin me into a full-time business owner instead of a no-name, albeit dedicated writer. I registered my publishing business's name because I did want to take a shot at it. Someday. I wanted to be ready. I wanted to have my name picked out, have a following, have sold literally even one of my books yet. Someday. But they decided someday is today, and they've thrown me into the ring with no safety nets, like, good luck, have fun, bye! I'm not prepared. I wasn't ready for this. This wasn't my expectation, certainly not my intention to be a full-time small business owner right now, given any other option. But like I contextualized at the start of this video, I don't have any other work options. And being this unprepared has made me so much more likely to fail. If I'd known being a small business owner was going to suddenly be thrown upon me, I would have made an LLC, but I didn't because it didn't seem necessary. Wasn't necessary because I never thought this was how I would be starting my career. forced into it because I have no other options. In case you're not entirely up on what an LLC is, an LLC separates the business from the owner so that the two are not financially dependent. An LLC can go under without taking its owner's livelihood with it. Not a sole proprietorship, though. I am the business. I have to fund it with my savings. But again, how can I? How can I justify sinking my hard-earned savings into a business unlikely to ever be profitable? It would feel selfish and stupid if I did. So right off the bat, my business is crippled because I'm a reasonable person, and a reasonable person can't justify funding it. I'm at an immediate handicap, and I haven't even tried yet. I don't want to go down with this ship that I never intended to set sail on yet. It's incomplete, there are holes in the hull, and masts are missing. How can I do anything but think? And listen, I know why my government made the decision that it did. Because you can't bend the guidelines to every individual case, and they can't let people play both sides, reaping benefits of employment insurance while profiting from being self-employed. I get it. I'm not complaining about all this because I expect free money from the government. From this story, I hope I've made it clear that wanting to work for my benefits is what landed me in this position in the first place, denied to any of them. I don't feel entitled to EI, although I am jobless through no fault of my own. I just wish there was something else out there in place so that I haven't found myself suddenly so disadvantaged and set up to fail. Because there are no self-employment programs, no startup benefits, at least not where I am. I have reached out and tried to contact one of the small business assistance programs, I guess is what it is, nearby, and they haven't got back to me. It's been a month. I am just suddenly violently alone in this. Considered a small business owner, I was months away from ever launching, if that was really my intention, and years away from being sustainable. EI standards are set up in a way as to cut off anyone that seems remotely capable because they don't want to hand out free money. And it's almost sweet that they have the expectation that anyone spending a full time's worth of hours working on something will be profitable and not starve to death. It's optimistic, but unfortunately, in relation to the creative industry, devastatingly delusional. I know all of us want to be considered semi-professional, but governing bodies don't differentiate between wanting to be professional in your quality of work over wanting to be a professional as a potential income. Taking that extra step could be a step too far because governments want to catch you and hold your passions accountable to the levels of a business whenever they can. Their understanding of what constitutes a hobby and what constitutes a job are not differentiated by a reasonable system of judgment because they don't give a damn whether you're profitable. The prospect of whether you'll ever be profitable, or if deciding your hobby is now more than a hobby, it's your new job, is going to throw you spiraling into financial insecurity. That's not their problem. All they care about is making sure that they're not being taken advantage of. Which is fine. You do you, government, but people have a right to know what rules you're playing by, that they don't suddenly find themselves sucked into playing an unwinnable game. The factors they use to determine something a job don't take into consideration the job's viability. If your side passion or hobby isn't profitable, maybe don't mention it. I'm not saying commit fraud, but you need to be very clear about your intentions, or, like me, other forces will decide your intentions for you. If you talk too seriously about your dreams, someone else might take them and twist them into your new reality, your new nightmare. I tried to contextualize my situation with the evaluator that I talked to. I tried to explain that what I've done and the amount that I commit to writing isn't at all that exceptional. By their standards, I'd be cut off from benefits if I was also a booktuber, for example, that spent more than 15 hours a week accumulatively reading books to review and editing videos if I made any amount of AdSense, which sounds ridiculous, because it is. But I was shut down, quite literally told, you can't backtrack. Being a book publisher is your dream, right? We talked about it, saying that you're not doing that now after what you told me just to get EI benefits is fraud. And how do you argue with a government employee about how their lack of context twisted your legitimacy as a writer into a small business when they're throwing around words like fraud? I will admit that I didn't answer things very well. I hesitated, I agreed to things based on hypotheticals that I shouldn't have, because their questions lacked so much context from the reality of what being a writer actually is. If I hadn't said anything, if I simply said, no, I don't intend to do anything with the business name I registered over the winter, and carried on just like I had been up until that point, I would have received benefits. And I can't help but feel that the standards used to determine me as a liable small business owner aren't very reasonable. I am devastated right now, full of anxiety and so much pressure. And I hope that making you aware of how this happened to me might help make sure it doesn't happen to you. I worked a labor job and got laid off and was depending on employment insurance to support me through the winter. But now I'm declared a small business owner because I took a few steps too far as a writer. I don't think any other self-published writers would look at what I've done and bat an eye, or think that I should be held accountable to a small business standard just because I secured a business name for my brand, or wanted to make a couple bucks from my writing associates whenever I wanted to help them with their projects. I wish I had a moral to the story, or a solid piece of advice for other small creators. I wish it was as easy as saying something like, don't start taking steps forward unless you're ready to actually go somewhere with them. But that's just unfair. If things had gone differently, I'd still be in a real job plugging away at my hobby like I always have. And someday I would have started my publishing business on my own terms and be better set to succeed because of it. Those little steps forward are necessary. It just sucks that sometimes you'll be forced to either go back or just start fucking running. And that's what I'm doing now, I guess. I'm just fucking running. I wish I wasn't running just to get to the starting line, but there's nothing I can do about it now but full commit. As cripplingly overwhelming as spontaneously having to rely my livelihood on a small writing-related business is, I am. I have to. I'm already here, so I guess I should try my best despite the odds. I am a publisher now, I guess. I'm doing my dream job. I just never thought that I'd feel so miserable when someday I said that out loud. Thanks for watching. Keep an eye out for the next couple videos in this series. They won't be Patron exclusive, so they will largely cover a lot of what we went over in this one, but in a less specific, less personal manner. So yeah, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.